This show is brought to you by listeners and viewers like you. Evanex.com Tesla accessories, our TeslaOwnersOnline.com community, and our Patreon supporters at patreon.com/TeslaOwnersOnline. All right, guys, it's time for another episode of the Tesla Owners Online Show. I want to say thank you for everybody for joining in. I am joined by my usual guests, Ian and Eric. How are you guys doing?
Doing well.
Doing very fine. Thank you very much.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. Now, this show has been a long time coming, something I've been wanting to do for quite some time, but, you know, everybody's schedules get in the way. But I want to welcome Ryan McCaffrey on the show. We finally got a chance to get Ryan on the show. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ryan is the host of the Ride the Lightning unofficial Tesla podcast, which I've been a long-time listener right from the beginning. And he also has a day job, of course, because we all do. But anyway, so Ryan, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good to see you guys. Yeah, see, all you had to do was ask. I'm not one to say like, hey, let me come on your show. It's like, if you ask, sure, maybe, but you know, I'm not one for self-promotion. So it's, you just have to ask. A guy wants to be wooed a little bit. So I appreciate it.
And I totally understand that, but
And it's almost Valentine's Day, so we picked a great time to come on.
And we're super appreciative of your time. And we're super appreciative of your time. I know how much work goes into your podcast, because that's the one thing I really take from your podcast is the sheer amount of dedication and work you put into that thing. So, you know, congratulations, buddy. I mean, hats off to you.
Well, it's, some would call it dedication, some would call it insanity, but it's working for me, so.
Well, we all do our own thing, and we all bring our own little mix to the whole Tesla universe, which is kind of fun to talk about. I thought I would take this opportunity today and just spend the time on you. We're not really going to do a lot of Tesla stuff, other than the fact that, you know, Elon was just on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I had a chance to listen to, all 3 hours of it. Oh, my gosh. How many times has he been on the podcast? Like 3 times now?
This is his third time on, I believe. Yeah.
I have to say, this was the best one ever. This one
by far.
Yeah, it was really good.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, I only got about 15 minutes into it, so I've still got to listen to the rest. But yeah, Joe had dropping episodes on Thursdays, which is like about when I've wrapped up pre-production on my podcast every week. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get it all digested for this week's episode, but yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, Elon really, you know, there's no weed involved in this one, but there's certainly some imbibing of some liquor. And about 2 hours and 7 minutes into it, it really starts. I mean, Elon really drops some bombs, and it's really quite funny.
Australian story.
Yeah, you'll know when you get to it. It's really quite funny. Not too much information. I mean, for those of us who've been watching Joe Rogan, listening to Elon, we kind of know the drill. I'm actually quite surprised that Joe didn't even know about what SpaceX was really doing. He basically alluded he'd never seen any of the rockets land before, which I thought was
the weirdest thing. They were doing kind of this. I was astonished Joe had never seen a Falcon 9 booster land, and I was equally mystified how Elon really didn't seem to know anything about all of the big UFO stories that have been making, you know, the rounds, especially on Joe's show the last few years, you know, with the Tic Tac and the Go Fast and all that stuff. Commander Fravor, who's been with Lex Friedman. I mean, this has been headline news in the New York Times. And he was like, oh, you know, like Elon has been so like, aliens aren't out there. Trust me, I would know. You know, he's got his little joke, and he drops it on the show. And he was just, I think, quite mystified by that. I would love to see him sit down and watch. Like Lex really goes at it with Commander Fravor there for the better part of 4 hours, and they had a great conversation. I would love to get his take after seeing all this evidence, because I think it'd be fascinating. I don't think he knows, but yeah, the two of them kind of doing that, like. You don't know about my rockets? You don't know about aliens? I was like, whoa, okay.
Well, we could certainly throw him some books. I think Elon has an excuse. He's just too damn busy.
For sure. It's understandable.
Anyways, highly recommend it. We won't spend much time on that. We want to get right down to Ryan. So the reason I wanted to do this is to give everybody an opportunity. Now, we know that we have some listeners out there who've obviously listened to your show, Ryan. I've been a long-time listener myself. But I don't think there's quite enough time in most people who've actually done interviews or not so much to give you the floor to talk about you. Now, I know in your podcast you've talked about your interest in Tesla and stuff, but I think we'd like to begin with the show and learn more about Ryan the man. Like where are you from? Where did you live? Where did you go to school? What's your education background? And then we'll get into the Tesla stuff. So maybe you can just fill in a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure. So I'm originally from New Jersey, part of a big family. My mother is one of 7 kids, big Catholic family. So they're always like great relationship, tons of aunts and uncles around, and they all grew up in New Jersey. And when I was in grade school, they kind of all collectively decided they'd had enough of the Jersey winters, and so they all headed west. And a group of them went to Vegas. A group went to Arizona, and I was in the Arizona group, and so I mostly grew up in Arizona, but I still very much have fond memories and still family in New Jersey, so I still very much consider that home as well. But yeah, I've been a car guy my whole life. I remember my dad used to bring home on what felt like in my mind's eye, it was every night, but I'm sure it was something like once every week, maybe once every paycheck or something. He would bring me home a Matchbox or Hot Wheels car from, I guess he'd stop at the store on his way home. Mm-hmm. And I'd amassed this hope chest full of Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars that I used to just play with for hours in our basement in New Jersey. And I always loved cars. Even as a little kid, I would sit in the back seat, and I could identify like every car. And even my parents couldn't because they weren't car people, but I knew every single car from the Hot Wheels cars, right? Because I just had so many of them that I knew what all the cars were.
Did you have the tracks too?
I'm sure there were a few. I don't have like a vivid memory of like one of the loop tracks or something, but I'm sure there was stuff like that in there. And then that kind of moved on. So I'm 40, so I'm kind of the right age where when I was, I don't know, maybe like 9, 10, somewhere in there, the micro machines started becoming really popular, which were just super tiny versions of Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars. And there were definitely play sets for those. And again, hours I would spend with them, just letting the imagination run wild and driving the cars all over the place. And just always loved cars. And that the ultimate manifestation of that was when I saw Back to the Future as a kid. I'm far from the only one at my age, but that was the first time I'd seen a DeLorean, and it would not be the last. And it just, that car just was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And so that kind of just got filed away in my head. And over time, yeah, just growing up in mostly in Arizona there. And when I turned 16, which is the driver's license age in Arizona, that would have been 96. That's right when the internet started to kind of become a bigger and bigger deal. I know to a lot of your listeners, they're like, what? What are you talking about? The internet's always like, no. My first modem was a 14.4 baud modem. I'm a little too young for 9600 or earlier baud modems, but 14.4 was where I came in, and you go to the dial-up service, and so I started. I turned 16, and there was just this thought that went off in my head of, well, let me look into DeLoreans. Like, I've got a license now. What's the deal with these things? And I came to learn that, especially at that point in time, the company went under in 82. In 96, the values were pretty low on DeLoreans. You could get a decent running DeLorean in like the high teens price wise, American dollars here. I know I'm talking to some Canadians, but so my brain started going at that point. I was like, well, that's kind of attainable. So I sort of filed it away, and over time just started kind of putting pieces together. I always did well in school, so I was able to get a full ride scholarship academically. And so, yeah, at some point I managed to, well, not at some point, it was after my freshman year of college, I convinced my parents that they should co-sign a loan for me to get a DeLorean, and I'd, get a job to make the payments. And somehow they went along with that. I don't know why, because that on paper, that's a terrible idea. Just, you want to buy an orphaned car that's at that point 18 years old. But and there's, I'd found one good shop in town they were a Volvo dealership. Excuse me, a Volvo third-party Volvo service shop, and the DeLorean has a Volvo-sourced motor in it. And so, well, I can get it serviced here, and it was only like 3 miles from our house. It was actually really close, and somehow they went along with it, and I bought a DeLorean and like had my dream car when I was actually still 18, turning 19, and yeah, just I sort of fell in love with the story of DeLorean as much as the car. You know, here was this guy, John DeLorean, who'd risen through the ranks at GM, and had all these big bold ideas. Now, John DeLorean, if you don't know, he is the father of the muscle car era. The GTO, that's John DeLorean. That's a John DeLorean joint right there. So he starts throwing these giant motors in these kind of everyday cars at GM, and they start selling even. And the brass has, they kind of are clueless with it, but he starts gaining some equity basically in the company with these cars that he's making, and eventually he becomes the head of Pontiac, and eventually he decides, you know what, these guys are just doing boring stuff. And it's just kind of the planned obsolescence. They're in the late 70s. It's like he decided, I'm out. He goes off and starts his own company. And makes a car that's a stainless steel car, which I know we're going to circle back to because it's just funny how history has come around to repeat itself here, oddly with Tesla, the other car that I'm in love with. But the idea was that the DeLoreans had 25-year body warranties on them from the factory. Of course, The company didn't last long enough to honor those warranties, but the idea was a car that would outlive its owner, and it was sleek and it was elegant, and the only thing it wasn't was fast. This was coming off the gas crisis in the late 70s. They needed something A, economical, and B, that would fit. Again, kind of Tesla-like. DeLorean went from a cow pasture in Northern Ireland to producing cars in 18 months, which that's fast now. I mean, Tesla is pulling that off now, and even better. They're doing 12 months. But back then, in the early 80s, that's insane. It's unheard of. So, just a lot of these bizarre little, just these interesting things about the history of DeLorean, and ultimately, I came to. I was married young, divorced. That sucked. Ended up remarried and had our daughter, and we were able to, with some help from her parents, buy a house here in San Francisco, which everything you've heard about San Francisco prices and cost of living is true. Everything. It's nuts here. No one should live here. For that reason, it's wild. I mean, believe me, it's a beautiful city, and I'm very grateful to live here. It's the overall great weather. I would say it's might be the second best food city in the United States outside of New York. I mean, there's a lot of amazing things about it here, but it is ridiculous, the costs. So we get a house, and we're just at this point where I'm not making a lot of money at that point in time. I'm younger in my career, and it just kind of, there was this point where my wife was never, arguably still really isn't a car person. And she just she's very fiscally minded and kind of just wasn't really on board with the DeLorean in the sense of the emotional side of it, which and I can't fault her for that. And I don't hold that against her at all. But I just kind of reached this point where I thought, you know what? I think we just had a kid. We just got a house. It's for the best if I sell this thing and move on from it. The DeLorean marketing tagline in 1981 was "Live the dream," and I got to do that. From my entire 20s, from the day I turned 20 to the day I turned 30, I owned my dream cars. I got it when I was still 18, tail end of 18, sold it when I was 31. And so, like most guys, if they're lucky enough to own their dream car, a lot of times it's not till they're maybe retired, till they're in their 50s or 60s or maybe even later. So I consider myself very fortunate. I had so many adventures with that car. I made so many great friends and went to so many places that I never would have gone to. We had national DeLorean car shows. I mean, there's a whole thing. There's like, there's a whole culture there, just like with Tesla. And so I parted ways with it, but along the way, there was this moment in time where I don't know how I became aware of Tesla at first. I don't remember the first encounter with it. It definitely wasn't with a Roadster. It wasn't in the flesh. It was, I read something, I heard something that, oh, there's this startup car company making electric sports cars right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I thought, well, that's interesting. And I came to looked a little more into it and found all these obviously coincidental but bizarre parallels to the DeLorean story. Bigger than life CEO, American startup, built in the UK, of course, as Tesla partnered with Lotus to build the Roadster gliders, just as DeLorean built the DMC-12 in Northern Ireland. There was even a Lotus connection because Lotus with the Roadster gliders, and Lotus did the suspension work on the DeLorean. So you had all these just really weird and even safety-minded. John DeLorean famously, he pushed for airbags in the 70s at GM and was told, no, we're not spending money on that. And the DeLorean, the original DeLorean prototype is the DSV, the DeLorean safety vehicle. And it was just an incredibly, the DeLorean was and is a very safe car. And then, you have Tesla coming along, and part of their thing is everything we do is going to be safety minded. So you just had all these completely coincidental, but incredible coincidences of these parallels. And so I started to really, and I've realized over the years, my personality, I'm very wired inside to root for the underdog. I mean, I was born in New Jersey, a Mets fan, not a Yankee fan, a Mets fan. I come out to Arizona, the Diamondbacks have kind of always been the underdog in their corner of the baseball world. And DeLorean itself, clearly an underdog story in the automotive scene. And then Tesla, certainly in the early days, very much an underdog story. So I learn all this stuff about Tesla. And so I reach out to what is at the time, the one and only Tesla showroom, which was in Menlo Park, California, at a former Chevrolet dealership, GM, coincidentally enough, not far from Stanford campus. And I got a hold of some email. I don't remember if I called or emailed, but I somehow got a hold of people there and just said, hey, I help coordinate our local DeLorean club. There are these strange little parallels to what you guys are doing. And is there any way we could have like an event, have a DeLorean club event at your location, at your showroom? And maybe just we could all see the Roadster, and you could kind of show us around. And to their great credit, Tesla said yes. I say to this day, if I had called Ferrari or Lamborghini, they'd have slammed the phone down and laughing while they did it. And that's not to speak ill of them necessarily, but Tesla was in that mode where they knew they just had to get people, as we all now know as Tesla owners, you have to get people behind the wheel of the car. When you can talk at them all you want about the benefits of the electric car, of the Tesla drivetrain, et cetera, but it's not until you get behind the wheel that you instantly get it. You instantly know that this is something special. So to Tesla's credit, here comes this maniac DeLorean owner saying, can I bring 17 DeLoreans down to your showroom, which is what we had, which was the biggest turnout of any club event I can recall in my DeLorean years. 17 DeLoreans all lined up in the parking lot, and they were so gracious. They even took us not only around the showroom, which had the I believe it was just the rolling mule, but a Model S prototype, because this was 2009. So the Roadster was out, but the Model S was nowhere close to being out.
It would have been an Alpha or something.
Yeah, and they even They even took us. There was another building in the back of the property behind the showroom that the public's not allowed into because it's where they did final assembly of the cars. The Roadster gliders would come in from the UK, be flown into San Francisco International Airport, and be trucked down to this building at the Menlo Park showroom. They would bring the gliders in, and then they had the battery packs and the PEMs brought in. Of course, those were coming in from Japan at the time. And they would do final assembly. They had a whiteboard of VIN numbers and like the status and, where each car is along the way.
Now, I know which one you're talking about. If you've seen the movie Revenge of the Electric Car, there's some really great scenes in there where Elon walks in and he's like, holy cow, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And he has to swallow that bitter pill and telling all the owners that he had to increase prices. So anyways, carry on.
Yeah. So it was just this incredible event. I had such a great time. Tesla was so gracious. I mean, they could have hung up the phone, or they could have just politely said, no, thank you. We're trying to sell cars here. And, none of us are probably buying cars. I mean, DeLoreans are at the time, again, they're not, the Roadster started at $109,000. So, it's kind of a different class, but to their great credit, they had us in and we had a great day. And so I sent an email the next day, just expressing my sincere gratitude for the time and effort that they put into that. And one of the guys writes back and says, would you like to come and take a test drive?
Oh, hell
so
yeah.
I said, well, sure. That sounds great.
Hello.
And as is the story for, again, many of us, most of us, all of us, the first drive, it changes your entire automotive perspective. At least it did for me. Here I am in a car that costs way more. I mean, I've been driving a very unique car for many years in the form of the DeLorean, but I'd never driven anything that expensive, that powerful. And Mike, who was the name of the sales associate that took me out, he's egging me on because I'm not like going wild in this thing. It's
six
not
figures,
mine. Right? And he's like, go ahead, come on. And he's egging me on. And we had like we had the car out for like 45 minutes. It was just crazy. And it's, there's a picture that he took when he's egging me on. I think there's a picture of the speedometer that I think I got it up to like 110 or something. And, don't tell the police, but it's just this incredible experience. And from there, that was it. I went down the rabbit hole and learned everything I could about the company. I started learning about the White Star, which was the Model S, and then this code name, the Blue Star, which would become the Model 3, and Elon's secret master plan blog. And I read that and, well, okay, so there's going to be the Model S I'm probably not going to be able to afford, but the next one, the one after that, that's going to be the car for me. And I just started following them religiously at that point. And it got to the point where, come 2015, the Model S is out and I've spent a ton of time with it. I have a cousin, Patrick, in Arizona, who had bought an early one. He was on the reservation list before the S came out. So I'd spent a ton of time with the car and I'd been following the company religiously. And my wife just got sick of hearing me talk about Tesla all the damn time. So I thought,
We're all
well, you know
guilty
what?
of that.
I do video game podcasts at IGN for my day job, and I love it. It's a part of my job I love doing. It allows me to scratch the radio itch that I always wanted to go into radio and never did. And so that's when I had the idea for Ride the Lightning, which at the time when I thought it up, I remember we were at one of our favorite restaurants, and I'm pitching this to my wife saying, what do you think of this? And then I said, well, there've got to be a million Tesla podcasts because there's a million, anything anyone's interested in, there's a podcast about it. And this was in like May of 2015. And I search on Apple Podcasts, nothing comes up. I'm like, that's got to be a mistake. Nothing. Nobody's done this. One other podcast managed to get started before I actually got my first episode out in the very beginning of August of 2015.
Yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, so I just kind of, I guess as far as the podcast space goes, or the content creation space, if you want to call it that, if you want to fold in YouTube and such, I guess I'm one of the first movers, one of the first folks to have kind of started doing it in the community. But it's really just it was a passion project from day one, and it's become, it's fulfilled the wildest dreams and more between the Roadsters and getting Elon on the show and Franz. And so it's just gone so far past what I ever thought it would do. And it's a blast. And now I get to, what I love about Tesla is, I fell in love with the cars and the company, but I love the community. I mean, it's just so great to be able to do something like this with you guys. And anytime there's a Tesla event and we all get to come see each other, and it's the community here it reminds me of the Delorean community in that it's very diverse. It's young people, it's old people, it's people of every gender, ethnicity, background. Tesla really casts a pretty wide net. It's not just a bunch of rich old white guys like it is for, I won't name any car brands but like you kind of would expect from a lot of other car club kind of situations. The Tesla community really is just amazing.
Yeah, I think your parallel, a lot of parallels, I think for a lot of us, Ian and I are big car guys as well. I think the parallel is pretty much the same way too. Elon, he's a lightning rod. He's today's, Steve Jobs in a lot of ways, if you think about it that way.
Sure.
But, and the company's still young. The other companies are all much older, of course. And, if you think about it, Elon's likes to remind everyone that, it's very hard to start a car company. Actually, it's easy to start a company, but it's very hard to keep it going because of the capital investments, right? He likes to remind everyone that Tesla and Ford are the only two car companies that haven't gone bankrupt in North America. So that says a lot. I want to backtrack. Oh, hello, Nutmeg. He wants to join in. I want to backtrack a little bit from the Tesla stuff. And I know you have a job at IGN, and you have a degree in journalism. Mm-hmm. And you wanted to do radio, you said?
It was always a passion of mine. I was lucky to fall into something that I was even more passionate about, which was I got a job out of college at a video game magazine, Official Xbox magazine. So it was hard to argue against that. But yeah, if that had never panned out, there's a good chance I might have gone into radio, which I'm kind of glad I didn't, because radio's pretty dead. Like, who listens to FM radio?
Yeah, but you got the voice for it, man.
That's the thing. I have this face. It's a radio face, which is why I do a podcast and not a YouTube show. But I was gifted by God with a good voice, so I'm grateful for that.
But what made you want to get into the journalism? Was that kind of a secondary, or was that just like failing the radio thing or getting into journalism?
It was definitely the first love. Writing English. Those were always my best subjects, the ones I was most interested in school growing up. So, I had a crazy idea around high school of, I would read the video game magazines, and I thought, well, I want to do that. Let's do that. So what do I need to do to accomplish that? Well, I need to crush it in school so I can, get to college, and then I need to crush it in college and go to journal. I could get an English degree, but I felt like that wasn't going to be as flexible as a journalism degree. So, all right, let's go to journalism school, which Arizona State, the big party school, yes, but their journalism program is actually very highly renowned. It's the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. I was just
about to ask if that's, the Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, isn't that funny? And I've always said, like, that your show, you always sounded to me like the Walter Cronkite of Tesla news. That's how I describe it to people. When
that's the way it is.
Exactly. It's got that authoritative, measured,
Yeah, we miss Walter, considering today's media climate, which actually brings me to a question I wanted to ask you, Ryan. Having a journalism degree and your day job, and you seeing what's going on with Tesla, how much does it bother you having a bona fide journalism degree, seeing the amount of bias and negativism in the journalism business? It seems like everybody, like, integrity's just gone out the window now.
Yeah, it's it is shocking to see how the industry has changed and how I mean, all of American culture, or at least far too much of it, in my humble opinion, has gotten so tribal in everything. Whether it's, it used to be, I could be a Mets fan and you could be a Yankees fan, and we could have we could sit at a bar and watch a Mets versus Yankees interleague game together and have a good time and rib each other about it. But even sports now, sports is just grossly tribal in a lot of ways, and obviously politics is, but even in my day job, the video game world is not entirely awful, don't get me wrong, but there are, my Twitter feed is ripe with just, I'll put some opinion out about Xbox, because that's sort of my primary beat, having worked at Official Xbox magazine for so many years. And some of these people just take the video game thing, it's like they're enlisting in a war, and like, I will pledge my fealty to this monolithic corporation, and I will defend your honor if anyone besmirches you. It's really but it's a societal issue as far as I am humbly concerned. It's just my opinion. You may disagree, but so yeah, and unfortunately it's even in media, it's gotten to that point too, where you have the liberal outlets and the conservative outlets, and it's the clickbait is out of control and not just at crappy low rent blogs, but everywhere. Even the most reputable organizations. The standards of journalism have, in my opinion, and I say, believe me, I'm not a real journalist. I have a real journalism degree, but I work in enthusiast media, and I recognize that that may not give me as much of a leg to stand on as I stand here and give my opinion on this. But yeah, it's a far cry even from when I was younger of what you'd see on the news of, it didn't matter which channel you turned on to get your news from 25, 30 years ago. And now it's, you're just, which echo chamber do I want to go into? Well, I'm going to go into the one that tells me what I want to hear, and the way so, it's a strange thing. And that's certainly it's certainly affected Tesla as well with, it's these various, not just outlets, but reporters. The Lynette Lopez's of the world, like, come on.
Russ Mitchell, yeah.
Russ Mitchell's, he's appalling to me, that man.
Yeah.
His, the fact that he works for the Los Angeles Times,
I know,
and is so blatantly, he wears it on his sleeve proudly. He doesn't even try to hide it. It's like, how does the LA Times keep this man on the Tesla beat? It should be, there's a clear ethical violation there. And again, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. It's not just your opinion, it's mine too.
Yeah, I sort of believe this, and a lot of what you're saying, Ryan, is so on the nose correct, because I looked at journalism from going back to the time of Walter Cronkite, looking at news organizations of the time, the Dan Rathers, Walter Cronkite of the world. Those were people in journalism, Tom Brokaw, like we knew Sawyer. Exactly. There were so many, Hugh Downs, Barbara Walters, there were so many names in the 70s and 80s that we as news watchers wanted to tune into to hear what they had to say about the world events. And we tuned in at 6:30 to watch the evening news at the family dinner table to really understand what was happening in the world around us. And as news organizations, whether they're print or televised media, started to realize that they were losing viewership, they were losing readers in the advent of the internet age, they had to monetize their funds some other way. So that's how you started seeing a lot more opinion pieces. Right. You're seeing these Sinclair news outlets that have these very opinionated pieces, and it broadened their reach very quickly.
And the law that was, I believe it might have been in the Clinton era, I don't quite recall, but there was a law that was, or a policy that was changed, that it used to be you wouldn't be allowed to own like more than one media outlet.
Right.
And now it's like, you can have the Sinclairs or whatever that just own a whole bunch
Murdoch's.
of,
you can buy anything
that
you
just
want.
own everything. And so you're really just controlling the message at that point.
Right. I mean, a lot of local news channels really aren't that local. They're really owned by a global conglomerate that really has, some puppeteering in work. So a lot of what you're saying is really correct. And I sort of have the same perspective. Again, we're not trying to politicize this in any which way, but we do know that politics played a part in how we've arrived at this location. And it's alarming to realize that it's hard. It's understandable. I will say that it's for some people to say, well, I can't trust the news, because it's hard to know where the truth really lies when anybody can create a blog, create a podcast. I mean, everyone now has an opinion and finds a way to channel it, whether it be through social media, through some other avenue. And it's hard to then take the anti-vaxxers. It's hard to take the anti-Tesla people. Like, all these folks sort of find their audience and they latch onto that. And next thing you know, the chorus becomes so loud, not in terms of their number, but in terms of what the messaging is. Right, and so the supporters like you and I will sort of see that audience and wonder, well, where's that coming from? What is their intent? And then it reaches into actual journalistic integrity. And then we say, well, why are these Lopez's and these Rosses of the world doing what they're doing? Well, again, the papers can hire them because in essence, they're getting readers, they're getting subscribers. And whether it's, if you want to say it's proper, ethics, that's certainly up for grabs. But in terms of these organizations, if they're putting out just opinion pieces and they're labeling it, hey, this is just Ross's opinion, then you're sort of saying, well, listen, we're not saying that what he's saying is correct, but we at least know, we're going to give him the outlet to do so. But it's a major outlet, and that's I think part of the problem.
Yeah, and that's what makes Tesla's real breakthrough over the last year or so all the more applause worthy, is that the product is so good. The product is so good that none of those attacks stick. They don't matter. I mean, that's why I've said this on my podcast before, but the Model S in 2012 had to effectively be a perfect car, or as close to perfect as it could possibly be, in order for Tesla to have a chance to survive, to not only as an electric car to get anyone to pay attention to it, but to survive the onslaught of negativity. I mean, remember when the FUD got so prevalent that everyone thought that Teslas had a massive battery fire problem? Like, I would hear it from in-laws, from uncles who didn't, and again, this is 6-7 years ago, who, certainly none of them had Teslas themselves yet. I have a couple of family members that have since gotten Teslas, but, it really got to this, it can break through. These people can break through on their negative messaging, but the product is so good. Now, to their credit, Tesla has, like with that, they took swift action of retrofitting titanium plates into every single Model S that had been built and every single one that would come since. And guess what? You don't hear about battery fires anymore. Like, they're once in a blue moon, still happens. It's physics. Things will eventually break the wrong way somehow, but you don't hear about battery fires anymore because, the product is too good. Tesla fixes it. So it's awesome to see that now Tesla is to the point where the FUDsters don't really have anything left that they can.
They don't have a leg. Yeah.
They'll keep trying.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're going to come up with something with the Cybertruck. Like,
we still see stuff on the internet once in a while. I mean, it's died down quite a bit, but the Tesla Q crowd, for example, created their own little echo chamber. I mean, which was the worst thing that they could ever done for themselves. But hey, they dug that hole. Well, exactly. But I want to kind of go back a little bit because, the fact that you mentioned that, they were under attack all the time, but the product was so good that they ended up surviving. I see a lot of parallels with that. I've been in the IT business for like 30 years. I went through the whole hell of Apple being really good and then almost like literally going out of business. And then, you couldn't read an article through 95 through 97, even into 98, without the word beleaguered in front of Apple. And now look at them. I mean, the most profitable company in history. And I'm seeing a lot of parallels with Tesla now because despite all the FUD, the product speaks for itself. Now, Tesla's, always had some financial troubles and stuff just because it's monumentally expensive to get into the car business. But now that they're profitable, they're actually making money. Now they have factories. They have a very bright future ahead of them. So I kind of want to go back a little bit and just talk a little bit about your experience with the DeLorean, because it ties in a little bit with the Cybertruck. First of all, before we begin, you had your I keep saying Roadster. You had your DeLorean for what, 13 years?
12 years. 12 great years.
Okay. I hope you didn't lose any money on it when you sold it.
No, quite the opposite. I put a lot in over the years. I was lucky. I got it in good. It was in very good condition. I wouldn't call it mint. I wouldn't call it like car show pristine quality.
Usual stuff.
But by the time I was done with it, it was. Mm-hmm. And I in the end, I probably didn't make money from what I had put in over the years, but it's I did sell it for quite a bit more than I bought it for.
Okay. I was going to say, if you didn't lose, anytime you don't lose money on a car is miraculous.
I wouldn't trade the experience. It was, I miss that car, but I also don't. I don't regret the decision to sell it, but I certainly miss it. It's far from a perfect car. I talked about the underpowered nature of it. There are flaws aplenty in the DeLorean, and DMC didn't stick around long enough to rectify those flaws. But it is a good car. It kind of has a reputation as being a crappy car. It is not. It's a very good car. And it's a unique piece of not just automotive history, but pop culture history because of course, of Back to the Future, which I wouldn't have really known about it otherwise, and most people would not know about it otherwise. But there has never been anything like the DeLorean, and there will never be anything like the DeLorean ever again. And I'm not putting it on a pedestal saying that it was an imperfect car, but it is. The thing, what I love about that car was I bought it because I loved it. I saw it in the movie as a kid, and I came to learn about the car and the company, and I fell in love with the car and everything that came with it. I can still, in my mind's eye, like right now, I can close my eyes. I know what every surface feels like, what the driving position, the feel of the leather pull strap to bring the door down, the gullwing door down. Everything, it's all burned into my memory in the very best of ways. And it's just, it really was something special that I'm just very grateful to have had. It's really a special thing.
Yeah, you really lucked out because you really have what I would consider to be one of the most modern of the late, say last 30 years to be a really classic car.
Yeah. And what I was getting at before I just lost my train of thought there is what I was going to say is, I've never owned a supercar, but I've certainly observed them on the road as a bystander and seen other people observe them. And, with some supercars, some people will go, wow, man, beautiful Ferrari. Oh, look at that. Just a work of art. And other people will go, ugh, Ferrari.
Yeah.
F that guy. But the DeLorean, again, of course, it's all credit, like 90% of the credit goes to Back to the Future and 10%.
Which we have to get Andy Sly to finally sit down and watch that damn movie.
Yeah, we got to keep him
Who
to a
hasn't
chair,
seen? There's someone on this planet who hasn't seen this film.
Andy Sly hasn't seen it yet. So he claims. Anyways, carry on.
But the thing about the DeLorean is, and this is not an exaggeration, pretty much every time I would take that car out, whether I'm just going down the road or I'm at a gas station or I've stopped at it, if I'm going somewhere and I get out of it, and people they turn and look at the car, and it's nothing but smiles and thumbs ups and taking pictures. That car on the back of Back to the Future, people were happy to see it. Nobody ever went, ugh, F that guy in the DeLorean. No, it was people. It made, like, people were happy to see it. And that always made me happy, as I was always happy to drive it and happy to own it and grateful to own it. So that was like not what I signed up for. I signed up for the car, but that was always a really fun side effect. It made people were happy to see it when I would take it out.
Yeah. I think part of it is, and you mentioned the pop culture relationship that people have because of the film, but it's also in part because you could tell your exuberance, your youth, of what that meant to you as an 8-year-old seeing that car on film for the first time, and then your aspirations that led you into your late teens, early 20s to go, this is my purpose, this is my goal, and you finally did it. And then for the better part of 12 years, you made that baby yours. So you're able to, every single time you have that experience through somebody else's perspective, you're reliving that 8-year-old feeling of that is an amazing car. And I've seen DMCs in the wild, and I've taken a photograph of every single one of them, whether they're refurbished or if it's a mock-up of the Back to the Future car or something in between that, because it's just an iconic vehicle. And I remember where I was in my life when I first saw it on screen. And even now when I see it, anytime I see it, it's just, it has a certain connection to your past of a time that you felt good. And the movie itself is a heartfelt story. It's kind of weird and sickening in some ways because he makes out with his mom, but whatever. It's still one of those things that you have a connection to it. And that's why that emotional connection matters so much to people who see someone else driving it, because they go, oh, look at that guy. I wish I could drive that even for 5 minutes.
And I always took a lot of pride. I always wanted to represent DeLorean, the car, well. So I made sure my car was always clean. And that's why I put a lot of time and effort and money into, taking it from a good car, which is what it was when I got it, into just a pristine DeLorean by the time I sold it. Like when people saw it, I wanted them to say, wow, the DeLorean's a beautiful car. I didn't want them to go, oh, wow, that thing's a piece of crap. So I feel like I represented the DeLorean mark well in my time as an owner.
FineLab has a line of protective coatings that were engineered to protect your Tesla's paint, leather, carpet, plastic, and wheels, effectively blocking all those UV rays and environmental factors before they ever get to ruin your brand new baby. FineLab offers a complete line of car care products and ceramic coatings for both the do-it-yourselfer and professional detailers. Did we mention we also have the world's first self-healing coating? Check us out at finelab.com, that's spelled F-E-Y-N-L-A-B, to see the science behind the self-healing. Check out our product catalog and click Contact Us for a free quote from a certified installer in your area. FineLab and Tesla. We were meant for each other. I think that's an excellent segue to get into talking about the maintenance of the stainless steel. Now, I think most people who have seen the DeLorean know that it has a stainless steel skin. I mean, it's not going to be as thick as the Cybertruck, but that's irrespective at this point. So what can you tell us about the maintenance of stainless steel, given that there's no paint to deal with anymore? And what kind of things do you think, because we don't know 100% now, but what kind of things do you think we can expect to have to deal with in terms of maintenance of something like a Cybertruck who has, a completely stainless steel exterior body?
Well, first of all, one of the most frequently asked questions that I would get as a DeLorean owner, whether it was when I was displaying it at a car show or just out and about, not everybody did know it was stainless. I'd get is that aluminum? That was a common one. Is that aluminum? So the number one thing, and I've said this on my podcast, but people won't really get it until they have their Cybertruck. But what I can tell you now, and you can file this away and go, oh yeah, Ryan warned me about that. Uh-huh. Number one, expect to return to your Cybertruck covered in fingerprints. It's going to happen a lot because there's something about the curiosity of human nature of being accustomed, literally every car, 100% of cars that you see are covered in paint. They are painted vehicles. Yeah. So they have a look, a finish that we are all visually accustomed to. Stainless steel has a different look and a different feel, particularly when the weather's warm. It can get hot, but people are going to touch your Cybertruck. They are going to be, what is there? It is just, they can't help themselves. I don't think they're even consciously doing it sometimes. They're going to touch it. They're going to be like, huh? So expect fingerprints. And for a while, here I was, I made my dream car come true. I was, in my late teens, early 20s. For a while, it upset me because I'm big on respecting other people's property. I don't touch other people's cars because I don't want them to touch my car. I mean, a car is, I've always been a car guy, as I've said, but a car is the most expensive thing that you buy other than your home. But I would argue more than your home. A car is somewhat of an expression of yourself too. It is a choice. I mean, a home is too, particularly, I guess, if you can afford to build your own home and build it how you want it. Not most people probably aren't doing that, but a car really is. It is the most expensive kind of personality choice that you can make. Is how do you want to express yourself in how you're going to transport yourself around the area where you live. So I would see that the idea when I would come back to the DeLorean with fingerprints on it, but over time I just had to kind of, part of it was youth.
Just get over it.
Part of it is, it's going to happen. Got to move past it. And the thing that I would tell myself is, fingerprints wipe right off. It's fine. They're not scratching the car.
Yeah,
it's fine. Windex.
You
Windex your stainless steel. That's it. It's gone.
And
you can clean the whole thing with Windex. I've done that. I did that many times. Would just take, be at a car show or something, and just bottle of Windex, paper towels, spritz straight onto the body, and just wipe the car down.
And that takes the fingerprints away?
Takes the fingerprints and any dirt right off the car.
Nice.
It's like the OG waterless cleaner.
I would say don't bother with stainless steel polish. Some DeLorean owners I would know would use that. I tried it once. It just kind of leaves an oily residue that I don't think looks good, and it actually makes fingerprints worse if someone touches it. So all you're going to need to worry about with your Cybertruck, soap and water. That's it. Just the soap and water, the body, and it will look pristine for decades.
So what about things like light scratches? I've heard you say this before, and I think it's going to shock some people. But what do you do about light?
Scotch-Brite.
Yeah,
heavy-duty Scotch-Brite, and you brush with the grain. Now, we don't know if or what the grain will be, because the DeLorean, they would take the body panels, and they had these just heavy-duty, just like sandpaper belts, and they would just put a grain into the stainless steel so that it had a sort of a texture, a look to it. And I mean, the prototype Cybertruck doesn't really have that. It's just sort of a flat,
it looks more polished,
stainless steel. So
Sadly,
it'll be interesting to see what Tesla, the production version, does, because depending, like with the DeLorean, you take the Scotch-Brite and you just go with the grain, and the scratch would come out. So, but if there's no grain, and if you go to take it out, is it going to leave kind of a bright spot? So that remains to be seen with the Cybertruck. But yeah, scratches not a problem, and then dents, a good metal worker, which I'm sure there are going to be a lot more of them popping up in the automotive space once the Cybertruck gets really out into the wild. A good metal worker can take that out, can take out a dent or a ding, no problem.
If the skin is as thick as they say it is on the Cybertruck, I will rejoice in kicking the doors when I go to car shows just for effect. But yeah, I was always curious about the maintenance situation because, you're like me, you take care of your car. I've seen you take care of your car. It's the most expensive thing that we own.
I've spent a fortune detailing my car, which I don't regret, but that will be unnecessary. With the Cybertruck will be a professional detailer's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
It really will be, because there's nothing to do. There's no waxing it. There's no ceramic coating it. There's no paint protection coating it. There's no paint correcting it. It just is fine. And like I said, it's just soap and water, and it's fine for decades.
Nice.
You will never have a problem.
That's awesome. Well, looking forward to it. Now, you own a Performance Model 3.
One of the first.
Yes, I remember that. Actually, Ian and I called you when you took delivery of your car. That was fun times.
Yeah, you got yours, I think, about 3 weeks before me.
Yeah, that's right.
3-4 weeks, maybe.
How's it holding up? Everything good?
Everything is great. Yeah. Paint Protect, the aforementioned PPF, has saved me several times. I am a very big advocate for full body paint protection film if you can budget for it. Now, I know some people out there are of the opinion it's a car. It's going to take wear and tear over time. And hey, more power to you. I'm not judging. I'm not preaching. For me, I am so OCD and protective about my car. It's the most expensive thing I have. And I love that I want it to look its best. So I do go the extra mile with my immaculate reflections, my wonderful detailer, and the whole car is PPF'd over. And that works for me. That gives me peace of mind. And it actually has saved me quite a lot of paint damage over the first 25,000 miles, because San Francisco is a nightmare to drive around and things happen.
The one thing I remember about San Francisco and cars is the cars are beat up like hell over there.
It's a tough driving city for sure.
And we have to deal with winter here, so we put a lot of salt and grit on the roads. I mean, you should see Ian's car. I mean, he just had it completely detailed, but oh my God.
Yeah, the front end after the lightning run was destroyed. I mean, it felt like 80 grit sandpaper.
Yeah.
I live in Florida, so I'm staying out of this conversation.
Hey, Eric, you're lucky, man. You just paid off your car.
I did. Paid off the car today. Took delivery of the car. Thank you so much. Took delivery in April 2018, and at the time, I was able to put about 50% of the vehicle cost down as down payment. So when I reserved the car a couple years prior, I was able to all right, I'm going to start budgeting for the car and save for that car. And then when order time came, I'm like, all right, well, here's what I can give you today. And then finance the rest. And I had to do some refinancing just to be able to get my second home here. But as of today, I'm like, yeah, and I have the funds available. I'm just going to pay off the car because I hate having debt.
Oh, I hate
debt. So it's really good. But, Ryan's right. I pride myself on what the car means as an identity, of a reflection of my identity when I drive it. There are those people who will see the car, who maybe are sort of new to Tesla or don't really have a lot of acknowledged experience with the vehicle, and will sometimes say, "Oh my God, is that the new car? What is it like? Can I see it?" And I'm always like, touch it, feel it, see it. If you want to go for a ride, I'll put you in the car when it's safe to do so. Because ideally, it's like, do you want people to have that cultural experience with the vehicle? And when people sort of separate themselves from the rumor mongering and actually see the product right in front of them, the tangible physical product, they then realize, oh, it's not what I thought it was. And then the surrealness of it comes into play, and he goes, wow, this really is a really cool car. So I don't have the ability to get PPF and ceramic and all that kind of stuff. But I, like Ryan does, I take care of my car as best I can. But it is really honestly the most incredible car I've ever owned. Someone can now say, hey, listen, now that you own your car, I'll buy it from you. You couldn't. Like it means that much to me.
I'm the same
that this
way.
is my first electric car. Like you're not buying it from me.
I mean, this is my second Tesla, and even though I went down a different path and bought the Model X, I mean, as nice of a car that was, I wanted the performance Model 3, and when I was ready to buy one, it just wasn't available. So when the time came, that's when I got. I love this car. It made me fall in love with sedans again. After driving SUVs for like the last 15 years, I love this car, and matter of fact, my next car is going to be the Cybertruck. That's my next exciting car that I'd like to get. But I'm not getting rid of the Model 3. Bev's going to drive it, so we're gonna hold on to that. Speaking of which, Ryan, I know how much you love the sport wheels when you got your car, because back in the early days we were talking about it all the time. I see you're rocking this.
The prototype had 20-inch wheels on it, which I thought for me just fit the car perfectly. So when it shipped with 19s. I was like, uh-oh, that proportion doesn't look right to me anymore. But thankfully, they brought the 20s out. So,
but now I see you're running your 0Gs. You like them better?
They are. We had no idea what they would look like. I was lucky enough to win a set as part of the referral program, and my thought was, if I like them, I'll keep them on the car. If I don't like them, I will use them. I'll put winter tires on them for any time we want to go up to Lake Tahoe or something like that. Of course, I'm not going anywhere nowadays, but in time. And I'll tell you, as soon as the first people took delivery of them and started posting pictures online, I was in love. And I was like, oh, this is against the performance red brake calipers too. This is going to look real good. And I am in love with those wheels. I think I know wheels are completely subjective, right? What's gorgeous to one person is hideous to another. But I am in love with the 0G wheels, and I'm so grateful to have gotten.
I'm with you on that. As soon as I saw them, I said, "Oh my gosh, I gotta get a set of those." The nice thing is that, with my car being so new, I had put winter tires on it right away. So I had literally like no miles on the 20 inches. So I was able to offload them very quickly. So I'm very happy about that. Now, speaking of which, you have a Performance Model 3. That's the car you've always wanted. You love it and stuff. Is there anything in the product lineup now or coming that if you had your own money, what would you spend on? Like what Tesla would you buy with your own money?
I have never owned a truck, but I would, if I would get a Cybertruck because it's stainless steel and it's just freaking weird. Because again, I drove one of the weirdest cars ever in the DeLorean, and I loved it. I think again, part of that underdog mentality, that rooting for the underdog thing of me, I think part of it is that I want to be unique, and I don't want to be. Because, I don't have the football player good looks or whatever. So it's like, well, how can I be? So, I guess it's ego, right? I guess if I would drill down far enough psychologically, there is part of it is ego of like wanting to be unique and wanting to be special. And even though the Cybertruck's going to be mass produced, I was lucky enough to get to ask Elon directly at Battery Day, what's the ultimate production the volume of these per year, and he said 250 300,000 is what he's seeing. The Cybertruck is going to be there's just nothing else like it on the road. It's going to be wholly unique in similar ways, of course, that the DeLorean was and is. And yeah, if I lived somewhere else besides tight, cramped San Francisco, I probably would swap the 3 for the Cybertruck. But as such, I'm lucky. I'll keep my 3, pay it off, because I've got a couple more years to go on my payments. But Cybertruck would be the way to go. But I am looking. I'm very fortunate that I will get that unique experience, basically in perpetuity. Again, by virtue of the referral program, Trevor, you and I were in the right place at the right time to win the Roadster. And so that I look like that's a car that my plan is to keep it until I die, like many decades. I mean, hey, maybe plans will change and who knows, but my intention is I'm going to keep this forever, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that will guarantee me rock star status at any supercharger I ever visit. And part of the fun, I loved talking about the DeLorean with people. Whenever I would go somewhere and somebody would come up and ask about it, I just loved, because again, it's to Eric's point earlier about just sharing that enthusiasm. And so I always loved talking to people about the DeLorean, and it was just whether it was clearing up a long-held misconception that somebody had about it, or just, somebody else was interested and wanted to know about it. So I look forward to doing that again with the Halo car.
Yeah, I don't blame you with that. That brings me to the point. Like, I was going to ask what your plans. I see you're wearing your plaid shirt tonight.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I was going to say really quickly, interject here. If I had a Roadster and someone said, "Listen, if you want to trade in your Roadster for one ride on Dragon," I'd be like, where do I sign? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I would gladly give up a Roadster to go for one trip in space. Are you kidding me? That'd be fantastic.
Ryan and I have had many conversations offline about the Roadster situation. I mean, you're absolutely right. We were very fortunate to be at the right time in the right place about the Roadster. Matter of fact, I remember calling you on the phone or texting you.
The news to me, actually, because I was at work and like a bunch of them went through at once to push me over the edge, and you actually broke the news to me.
Yeah, it was funny because we were actually looking at our referrals and we were comparing notes back and forth, and we're like, any day now. And I remember calling you and I said, congratulations. And you said, oh, that's pretty cool, because at the time, that was when you were going to have Elon Musk on the podcast. And you said, oh, well, yeah, it's pretty cool about Ryan, or about Elon. I said, no, man, check your referrals. And you're like, oh, yeah.
That's exactly what you said. And that's exactly what I thought. Yeah, that was
what a terrible week that was.
Because that was right. Yeah, that was right when Elon first on Twitter publicly said, "Yeah, okay, maybe we'll." And so I just thought, that's
you had a double whammy that day, and you thought I was talking about one thing when I was talking about the other.
Took another 6 months after that to actually get the sit down with Elon, but it happened.
So considering the fact that we've both jointly won a couple of them, well, proof's in the pudding when we see it. What is your plans for both cars?
I'm very fortunate that the second one I have a buyer. So here I don't know. Maybe you're going to be like filthy rich off this, Trevor. I don't know how Canada's tax system and
we still don't know
works, and I would be happy to be educated about it. But here in the United States, I basically had to win 2 of them to win one of them because the taxes are so significant.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not complaining here. I'm just explaining. This is not a complaint, but the taxes are a lot because it's taxed as income.
Right.
So
and you have to pay retail sales tax on it too.
That too. So
it is in California.
Yeah. So that's California sales tax. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the second one, I was able to line up a buyer, and it's let's see. I got to say this just to protect his privacy, but
I understand.
I'm very grateful to say it's a longtime friend of mine who worked for Tesla in the earlier years, and he's actually using stock
nice.
All the employees get stock, so he's buying it that way. He's retired now, so he's this is time. And so like I couldn't be more thrilled that he and I will like the movie Swingers, we'll get to we'll each drive our own car and we'll get to go have fun together and do stuff. And I couldn't be. I've known this gentleman for a long time, and I'm thrilled that it's going to be him, that it worked out where he came to me and wanted to do it. So
and then Nick is going to call you back and say, "Don't ever call me again."
Probably not. But then and then my intention is to, as I said, keep the other one forever. I'm sort of budgeting for my assumption. I don't really know. My assumption is that those massive Michelin Sport Cup 2 tires are maybe going to last 5,000 miles a shot. So I'm figuring on a set of tires per year,
PPF,
which will probably be about. I did actually kind of look them up. I think it'll be about $3,000 for a set of those tires, and then insurance will be not insignificant, which means I need to keep doing this podcast and trying to keep that income, the little bit of income that generates, going for a while. But the nice thing is, and Trevor, it's this as well. It's if we had been lucky enough to somehow win Ferraris through some sort of Ferrari owners online and the Ride the Ferrari podcast. Yeah. I don't know about you. I wouldn't be able to accept the car. I wouldn't be able to accept the prize because I could no way afford $10,000 oil changes and however thousands of dollars for fuel flushes and engine maintenance. But a supercar Tesla,
I'll take it.
That just has very minimal maintenance, again, outside of the tires. Great. I can actually do that. So that's
an excellent point, actually.
Yeah, life is I'm humbled and grateful beyond words. I mean, the episode after I won the car is, it's self-indulgent is the word that comes to mind, although I don't think that's quite. It was all from the heart, but I rambled way too long. I think it was like 17 minutes of
I'll permit it.
Me practically in tears thanking the audience for supporting me and making that possible, because I grew up very middle class, and again, it's not a complaint. It's just that I grew up that way, and I still, I guess, by pretty much any definition, am a middle class guy. That something like this shouldn't happen to somebody in my lane, for lack of a better term, and so the fact that it has is is, again, it's just it's a humbling, crazy thing that, I don't know about you, Trevor, but it still doesn't feel real. Like, I don't think it will actually feel real until delivery day. Like,
I'm with you on that.
It definitely got tangibly more real when Tesla added the cars to our accounts not too long ago. That I just like, I stared at it for like half an hour. I was just like, wow.
Yeah, I
like,
think I texted you immediately to check your account too, because I had actually been working with Tesla for, oh my God, I think about a year and a half to try and get that happening.
Yeah, you were pretty hot to trot on that, and I kept trying to tell you, just relax, it'll happen. There's plenty of time.
I know,
but yeah, it finally happened, and it's the most insane thing to ever happen to me, and I could not be more humbled and grateful. I mean, I did spend 3 years before that building a podcast from nothing and building an audience by making the weekly commitment. I never missed a week. And so, it's not that it completely fell from the sky.
No.
I worked hard.
It wasn't a lottery.
To get myself in that position. But as I said earlier, it really was the right place at the right time, because if the referral program had ended a year earlier, or if they'd never allowed the Model 3s, because that's really what the floodgates opened on the referrals. It was only S and X, and to his credit, Ben Sullins won his entirely on S's and X's. He was the first person to win the Roadster, and he did it before they added the Model 3, before the 3 was eligible to count as a referral toward your count. And so, yeah, he really did. Like, I don't think I would have ever gotten there without the 3 being part of it. So again, it's a lot. We worked hard. You built a forum and a community and a podcast and a YouTube channel over time. We worked hard to kind of be in the right position, but it certainly required a hell of a lot of good fortune from there that was well out of our control.
Not only that, but also people like me who are now owners, and whether you're a stakeholder and you own shares of Tesla stock, or you're an avid supporter of the company as a whole because of their initiatives for electrifying the grid and things like that. It's in large part because of what you guys created from the outset when Tesla was a fledgling company, and a lot of folks weren't sure about its viability long term. So your analysis and your analogism to what DMC was in its early years, to seeing Tesla as that same iteration, like there's a lot of parallels between the two, as you noted earlier in the show. You sort of felt like, I need to embrace this and support it, because I can do for Tesla what the presence of a car in a film did for me, and what sort of propelled that. Because like I said, by the time you came into ownership of your first DeLorean, it was long after DMC as a concept had really been like a forethought for people. Like in the 80s, sure, but in the 90s, not so much. And so when you guys are building these platforms out, where you're introducing a new audience to podcasts and web channels and everything else, you're organically building out this audience. And it's a lot of work. I can tell you, I do a 10-minute podcast on a weekly basis, and I spend hours. Call me curious. I spend hours doing what ends up being a 9-10 minute show. So I can only imagine, like you mentioned the time from when Elon said, yes, I'll do your podcast, to when it actually recorded. I can't even begin to imagine the amount of prep work, the questions you wanted to create, the format for the show, getting everything set up to do the actual recording, editing it in post, all of that stuff, especially when you're doing audio and video and having that ready for an audience. Like, all of that work all led to Tesla saying, we are where we are in large part because of what you guys did from our early years. And we would not be here had it not been for you, because you gave an audience the desire to want to learn more, and to basically go, well, we're not getting it from them because they're not doing traditional advertising. You guys are doing it for us. So as a reward, we're going to have this program, and it just accrued enough referrals. So I've been a benefactor too of what was the same wheels that you got, the 0G wheels, and I use that to convert into funds to refurbish my home here a bit. But every person who's benefited from referrals, even now, just getting supercharging miles, is a big deal, because I can't think of any other legacy automaker who's saying, if you get people to buy our product, we're going to reward you in some way, just as a courtesy thank you for doing that. And so it's even like now, like EV credits is great. Like, where else can you get that? And you guys are certainly the large foundation that led to that. You, Ben, Trevor, so many of you guys.
Timing is everything, I guess.
But sure.
It's been a fun journey. We had a lot of fun. Any closing thoughts, guys? Because we've been doing this for an hour and 20 minutes now. So
have we really?
Yeah,
God,
I know time flies.
Like 20.
I know.
I
fell asleep. I haven't heard from him, and
I got one. I just got to ask you, Ryan, because ever since you actually managed to do it, and I listened to it, I have to say, honest opinion, your interview with Elon was my favorite he's ever done with anyone. And I think it's because you're the first serious car guy who sat down and asked him like really detailed product questions. I mean, everybody, bits and pieces we've gotten from this interview, but you really went after all the stuff that the nutcases like us wanted to hear. So I was so appreciative of that interview. But I was curious, like, take us through the mindset, of coming into that interview. Like, how daunting a prospect was it? Because we've all been like, oh, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we ever did our show? But I mean, the reality of actually sitting down with the man must be pretty daunting.
Yeah. So I do interviews. I interview video game developers all the time as part of my day job. And I love doing it. It's one of my favorite aspects of my job. I love kind of getting to the human stories of these people behind these games. And so I don't really get nervous before interviews, but with Elon, I did, because I just wasn't quite sure what to expect. I mean, I'd seen a million of his interviews, but I'd been respectfully warned that if he's like crazy busy, he might just or if something comes up, he might cut it off after 20 minutes and be like, I gotta go. If he's just come out of a meeting where he's gotten some kind of bad news about something, that might not bode well for the interview. So I just kind of wasn't sure. And also I very much assumed and was proven to be, I knew he didn't know who I was. So I don't know if, is he even gonna, really be checked into this? And again, I don't say that disrespectfully. Like I'm nothing. Like I'm not the New York Times sitting down with Elon Musk. I'm not Motor Trend sitting down with Elon Musk. I'm a little grain of sand on the automotive world beach. I mean, I'm nothing. So I knew that, like, okay, well, but I knew I'd be ready, like, because I've interviewed enough people. I knew I'd be ready. I had probably a couple pages worth of questions I didn't use. I mean, I knew I had sort of like a 30-minute version prepared. I had like a 60-minute interview version prepared. I had a million. I basically tried to just think through every scenario possible. I knew the first question was going to be critical to try and like break the ice with this guy and get off on the right foot. I wanted to not, make sure I was not going to ask things that he's been asked a million times before. And so, but yeah, to your point, I mean, I appreciate the kind words, because what I will say about my interview that I hope doesn't come off as egotistical, but I do feel like I was probably the most Tesla knowledgeable person that had ever interviewed him up to that point.
Yeah.
100%.
I knew, like, I've been following this stuff religiously since 2009 when I drove the Roadster and went down the rabbit hole. So I knew everything. And there was a moment very early. In fact, it was while he was answering my first question. So my first question to him was, because I wanted to try to get into his mindset and get into a place that he had never talked about before. So I said, my first question to him was, when did you know with the Model S, when did you know you had something special? Was it like on paper, you knew like this is going to revolutionize everything? Was it, the first time you drove a prototype? Was it not till it comes out and hits the streets? I kind of wanted to get him thinking, like, if not a yes or no question, like, what is he going to say to this? And he started, I was a little nervous. I was a little worried at first because I thought that was a good opening question. But he started answering it by just kind of going through the history of the Model S, which he's talked about.
I remember that.
Yeah. But there was a point during the answer where he says, well, we wanted to make sure we had a car, that was safe, that could seat up to 7, and that would get, at least 250 miles of range. And we ended up with like 200. And I just, if you listen to the interview, you hear me go 265, because that was the range of the original 85 kilowatt hour Model S. And that's just Tesla knowledge that I had seared into my brain, because I know all this. I soak in all this stuff every day. And what you can't see in a podcast, I'm not even sure you would have seen it had we filmed it, but I say that, and he shoots, his eyes come up to meet me. He just shoots me this look of like, oh, you really know all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that happened at one other point during the interview as well. And that's why, if you listen to the whole interview, as I know you have, but the interview gets better as it goes, because I think he gets more comfortable with me, and he gets okay, this guy knows his stuff. He knows all about these cars. And because what I don't know if I've ever said, I'm sure I've said it publicly, but I was actually only promised 30 minutes by Tesla PR, which I did ask for an hour, because that's on my game developer interviews for IGN. I do an hour, because for me, it's you need the time to just settle in and dig in with somebody. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted an hour with Elon. I mean, of course, who doesn't? But they said, well, we can promise you 30 minutes, and maybe, if he feels like it, he might give you another few on top of that. So I was prepared for 30 minutes, but we just, we're getting into it and we're getting rolling. And at one point, I glance, so just literally move my eyes over to check on the PR woman. She's on her keyboard. She's on her laptop. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna keep going here, because I can't look at my watch during an Elon interview. That would not be a smart move. But in my, the mental clock's running in my head, and it finally gets to the point where in my head I'm like, we've been going for a while. I've gotten a lot of questions out, and finally I do the sideways glance again, and I see her give me the wrap it up sign. And so, but again, I hadn't looked at my watch. This is all just mental clock watching, mental clock timekeeping. And I came to, when we were finally done, it was oh, I got my hour. And so the fact that I was promised 30 minutes and he chose to hang in and do an hour tells me that I must have been doing something right. He must have enjoyed the conversation on some level. Otherwise, somebody would have stopped it, whether it would have been Elon or PR. So I did walk out feeling I felt like I didn't leave anything on the table. I didn't have any regrets. Oh, I wish I'd asked that. Or, did I have more things I wanted to ask? Sure. But I didn't walk out going I didn't walk out with any regrets. But I will say, I was in such a fog after, this surreal fog, where I truly and honestly,
that's what I wanted to know. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know if it was any good or not. I was like,
okay,
did the audio work out?
That was okay. But it really wasn't until it got out into the public and I started getting feedback where I was like, okay, I think I did pretty good on this. And
no, you did great, man.
Oh, thank you. And it's, awesome. I hope I get to interview Elon again someday. I would be incredibly grateful. I've got episode 300's coming up. That'd be great. But I know there's COVID and all this, but if I never get the chance again, I hope I do, but if I never get the chance again, I can say, hey, I got an opportunity and I feel like I knocked it out of the park. I feel like I did a great job.
It was an awesome interview. The other one I really liked too is when you did with Franz. That was a different animal altogether.
He was fun. So Franz, when I was researching him before that interview, that one, I learned that Franz doesn't really do interviews, and I'm not trying to like brag by saying that. I think he must not really enjoy it all that much, because surely he must be asked by the Motor Trends and the what have yous of the world, but he must just not be really looking for that to be interviewed the way that Elon's happy to be out there talking about the company and stuff. But so, I mean, I'm very convinced that the only reason that he or Tesla said yes to the Franz interview was because of the Elon interview, which had been a few months prior to that. And so, yeah, Franz was very generous. Ironically, I got less time with Franz than I did with Elon. We went for about 35, 40 minutes. I could have kept going with him for a while. And I would love the opportunity to sit down with him again too, because it was 3 weeks before the Cybertruck unveil is when I sat down with him.
Yeah, I remember that because you asked him.
It was like probably 50 feet behind me on the other side of the wall.
Yep.
And you know, but of course they were tight-lipped on that.
Yeah.
Understandably, why would, you know, you're not going to tell some idiot like me with a little podcast about the thing.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall in the design studio, huh?
Yeah, but so yeah, I mean, I would love to do another 40 minutes with him just on the Cybertruck, and just like, please walk me through this. Exactly like you're saying. Like, I want to know all about how this came to be. But Franz was a real, very kind to me too. Very generous with his time.
He's a really neat guy. He's very approachable. I mean, I ran into him not at the Cybertruck event, but at the Model Y event. Really nice. I mean, he just mills around, talks. I mean, Elon he's got handlers and stuff, but not Franz. He'll walk around. And my only one interaction with him, he was standing over by, the Roadster. And I guess he got done talking to somebody. And I only had one question. I know you had a question for him. And I know you asked Elon about the color. But I asked him, I said, where's the charge port on the Roadster? And he just smiled. He looked at me. He says, we're working on it. So that's, I mean, he's tight-lipped, right? So I could have had more questions, but
you can't hide it in the taillight as it's currently designed, because they got that like badass sort of negative space with the carbon fin, and then the whole negative space.
So many unanswered questions about the Roadster.
The taillight design on that thing so much.
I know, it's
well, I think also what's interesting in Ryan's conversation and the podcast that I've heard is journalists typically don't ask questions that they don't already know the answers to. So they would know when the subject of the interview is actually giving them BS or not. And one of the difficult things to do with these two individuals is they're very tight-lipped about a lot of things that are not yet publicly known for NDAs and other things. Like, generally, having worked for Tesla, you sign an NDA for everything. Like, if there's any inside stuff that Elon sends in an email that's going company-wide, you really cannot say anything for fear of the ramifications that stem from that. So when you have literally the two power brokers of that company who know all the ins and outs of every project, both in existence and yet to even be imagined, and you're trying to probe deep into those minds of theirs to say, hey, how did you come up with this concept? Or what, like, whatever you do get from them, because either they're eager to share it or it's something that's just now, you know, in that public sphere, you get it. But that's the challenge too during those interviews. Like, Joe Rogan's done 3 interviews and each one's different from the next, because it's just a casual conversation, and most oftentimes it has nothing to do with his daily experience. So he's just going to share his thoughts and his musings on whatever, which most of Joe's interviews are anyway. But when you have, as Ryan's being so humble about himself, this lowly podcaster that he is, to do these interviews, you have a laundry list of things you want to talk about, because you're in that sphere as a public person, seeing this guy, and you're like, I have so many questions for him.
I'm legitimately curious about this stuff.
Right. And so when you're trying to take that, I'm imagining it. It's like I said, you had pages of questions you didn't even get to. But even then, you don't know if Elon's going to answer something in 7 words or 700.
Right.
And so you may have a great question that lets him go, oh, I'm going to expand upon this greatly. And it just turns into this ever rolling barrel going down a hill. And you just don't know when it's going to stop. But you're just there admiring it because, like, oh my God, I'm learning so much from this. And yeah, so it's like I said, you're, as a journalist, you know generally what the answers are before you ask them. But for these guys, like, that's a hard thing to do because you really don't know.
Well, the thing I really admire about Elon, like, you can love or hate Elon, but as someone who's interviewed him and listened to every interview he's done, I do appreciate that Elon is honest in interviews. He does not like lie or give PR spin, which in like my game development world and on IGN, the message is usually really controlled, and you're probably not going to get more than what the PR person has authorized them to say about the project. But with Elon, he is honest. I mean, what if it's a distant memory now. Sorry, as one of my lights goes out because we've been going for so long here, which is great. I'm having a great time. But what made my name or the podcast name was everywhere. My interview got picked up at like Fox Business, CNN, just because he said I did ask him about the truck, the then pickup truck, the Tesla pickup truck. And that was when he first publicly said it's going to be under 50,000 and have the utility of an F-150 and the performance of a Porsche 911. And that got picked up everywhere because again in a more media controlled environment but Elon's just super honest because most CEOs would have just been like, yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, I did try to ask about the Roadster. He did shut that down, which I think is probably because they just weren't really working on the car at that point in time, as they're now clearly working on that car again. But yeah, like he is honest, which that's what makes I could ask like the 50 best questions I could think of, but if he doesn't answer any of them, the interview's horrible, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that he is an honest guy in these interviews means that if you ask the right questions, you can get some good stuff and you can get a really interesting conversation out of that.
Yeah, that was a really great one. The other times you can get pretty good information sometimes is during the earnings calls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but usually not from the usual analysts. It's, the YouTubers and the retail investors. Those are the ones that have the really good questions.
The people that know the company best.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've been going for quite some time here, but I thought we'd do a little bit of a closer. Ian and I had a little conversation earlier today. I understand you do a pretty good impression of Butthead.
Not really.
You did it on your podcast. That was good.
It's tough too to get into that mode. You just kind of, what are you talking about, Trevor?
that boy ain't right.
Shut up, Beavis.
That boy ain't right.
But then you go to Hank Hill.
That's right. I do that one too.
Propane or propane accessories?
Not bad. That's close.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
That boy ain't right.
That boy ain't right, Peggy.
Well, that makes two of us who can do Hank Hill. Ian thought I was the only one.
I don't think Mike Judge is going to be calling either one of us to fill in.
I missed that show, Beavis and Butthead. I don't know why, but it's just
coming back.
Is it
again for the second time? Oh. Yeah, Comedy Central this time is bringing it back with Mike Judge. Now, you may remember it rebooted. It came back as Mike Judge's Beavis and Butthead on MTV. It might have been like 10 years ago by now. And I don't know about if you watch it. I actually thought it wasn't very good. I was like, something about it's not the same. It's not.
The original series are good. I like. Yeah,
I'll be curious to see this next iteration of it. But even the only time I laughed during all the Super Bowl commercials, I don't know if you guys in Canada get the same commercials that we get.
Not always.
Super Bowl ads.
No.
But there was there were actually several ads that Paramount Plus, the CBS All Access subscription, streaming service is rebranding
now
as Paramount Plus, and the theme of it is it's all these Paramount Universe characters going up the Paramount Mountain, and then whatever, and there's one point where in one of them, because you see Beavis and Butthead are just there in a few of the little scenes in a few of the commercials, and at one point it's somebody I forget what the line is, it says the word crack, and then they just pan over to Butthead going, oh, he said crack. That was the hardest I laughed watching all the Super Bowl commercials, many of which are supposed to be funny, and I guess I'm just the right age where Beavis and Butthead just still make me laugh.
Yeah, I love those guys. I'll have to look it up on YouTube and see if I can see those commercials. Yeah, you're right. We don't always get the same commercials. Well, Ryan, it was an absolute blast. I want to say thank you for coming on the show. We've been trying to do this for so long, but, schedules as the way it is. But my gosh, we have so much fun. Usually at the Tesla events, otherwise, we live so far apart, we don't, but we talk on a regular basis. So I want to say thank you for joining us on the show. Hopefully our viewers and our listeners out there enjoyed it. We'll have to have you on again, maybe when we get some more Cybertruck information or maybe some Roadster and stuff, and we can shoot the breeze about that. Since you're a guest, you get to go first. You can plug whatever you want.
Oh, great. Well, if anybody's looking to go further down the Tesla rabbit hole each week, I do Ride the Lightning, the Tesla unofficial podcast. New episodes post every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. It's kind of structured on purpose like a radio show. You heard me talk about my affinity for radio earlier. So there are callers. People send me recorded calls. There's a call-in segment. There's the news block where I give, I've got all my whatever I want to say of the wisdom I've gleaned from following Tesla since 2009 and going over all the big stories of the week. And it's a thing. It's not my day job. I just love doing it. It's been a passion project of mine for over 5 years now. So I'm on all the major podcast platforms, whether it's Apple or Google or Stitcher or TuneIn. You can find it in your Tesla, either on TuneIn or Spotify if you've got the Spotify Premium in your car. And then I do everything. I'm not on video though. I'm on YouTube, but just as the audio. I don't have this is the Tesla Owners Online show is the only place you get to see my face. Probably for the best. But yeah, if you just like listening to podcasts on YouTube, you could search out Ride the Lightning Tesla on YouTube and you should find me easily. You got to add Tesla or else it'll be all Metallica videos.
Make sure you follow him on Twitter as well. It's DMC_Ryan. Before I give up to the other two guys, I think all of us want to say and give you and Daisy all our best wishes. I know that she's had some health things, but as you said, that she's doing a little bit better today. So knock on wood, everything's going to work out.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Ian, how about you? What do you want to plug before we kick the can for tonight?
Well, the usual stuff. If you have any questions about wheels, tires, or the odd technical thing that I can answer about Tesla, you're welcome to direct message me or just throw it out there publicly on Twitter. It's @IanPavelko is the handle. You can also find me at the Tesla Owners Online forum under the handle Mad Hungarian. Be sure to tag me, use the username with the @Mad Hungarian, so that way I'll wake up.
Like
do it 3 times. Yes, do it 3 times because I'm sometimes lazy with the forum. And but I'll get to you. I love answering the questions. I love helping people out, so that's always a pleasure to do. And then finally, if you're looking for something in the way of Tesla wear, I've got my little pet project to support EV organizations with the Evolve Wear line. I'm wearing one of them tonight here.
Awesome
so
shirt.
That you can find at Teespring, which is now called just spring.com.
Yeah, they changed their name.
Yeah, they did a little name change on it. So it's spring.com and just look up the Mad Hungarian Evolve Wear store there.
Excellent. And last but not least, our friend Eric Camacho, who's running his podcast and who's usually the guy who comes up with all the great titles for this show. But tonight's just called Ryan McCaffrey.
It is. So thank you so much. So first and foremost, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice in the 4 box that we got, or quad box, as I say on TV, if you start in Ian's box and kind of go clockwise, you'll see that the amount of objects behind us, I'm a minimalist by nature. So I have a treadmill, and then you go to Trevor, who's got like a canoe, and then you've got Ryan, who's got his collection of games and awesome technology, and then you have all the books that Ian has. I will tell you that true secret, Ian's never read them, but that's okay. I'm sorry. I'm just going to put it out.
They're not supposed to know that.
I'm so very sorry. Okay. First and foremost, you can find me on Twitter. The handle is ECFix. It's ECFIX. You can find Ryan on Twitter, by the way, at DMC_Ryan, DMC_Ryan. Give him a good shout. And I have a podcast, as was mentioned earlier. It's called the Call Me Curious Podcast. I created this podcast last year during the pandemic. To find out a year later, we're still in that pandemic. But it is a podcast designed to reveal some weird things about our world. For example, we mentioned Tesla on the show all the time. Did you know that Nikola Tesla did not like pearls? Why? We don't really know. But he once had his secretary wear pearls to work, and he's like, you got to go home. So you learn about weird stuff like that. Like Brad Pitt played Achilles in the movie Troy, which is based on Homer's Iliad. Well, during the filming of the movie, he ended up hurting his Achilles. So again, this is what Call Me Curious is. It's a podcast about weird SHIT that we learn about in our universe. It's a 10-minute show. Weekly podcast comes out typically now on Wednesdays. I rolled back from going from daily because that was nuts to just this. So get it wherever you get your podcast. It's available. It's created through Anchor. So it's a part of the Spotify network of podcasts, but you get it on Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you get podcasts, you find it. Again, Call Me Curious. Like, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. But get the numbers out there. I appreciate all the listeners. If you have suggestions for the show, things you want me to talk about that are things that are really quirky, again, just send it to me on Twitter. The handle is ECFix, and that's it for now.
Excellent. Yeah, please go check out his podcast. All right, well, that leaves me. You can follow me on Twitter. The handle's Tesla Owners Online. Check out the forum, teslaownersonline.com, the friendliest place on the internet to talk about Tesla. And that's it for this week. Thank you for everybody. And again, Ryan, thank you for joining us on the podcast. And we'll see you guys next time. We'll see you later. Arrivederci.
Thanks, guys.
He's 40. I'm 43. Who looks older?